been a long time since I've seen you. I'm sure you're doing wonderful work. That's why I'm not seeing you, but you must be really busy. So thank you for coming in and participating in this symposium, which you should have been participating in a lot of them, but you didn't get time. So hi.
Well, it's always great to be back and reconnect with people like you. I'm honored to be again in this forum, and I'm just amazed of the work that you have been putting all together, all this time, all this effort. You must love the chair where you're sitting right now. Perhaps you may have some kind of Guinness World Record on being on this marathon of mediation. So congratulations for that, because I know that it takes a lot of energy, input, and so it's I haven't seen the amount of effort that you're putting here together, and it's good to have these platforms and to share these experiences with people and mediators from many places around the world. So congratulations for that. And you kind of like to choose these hot topics to discuss and to provoke, which I think is good. To move things forward. Talking about legislation, there are always many voices and many ideas, and of course, different experiences. We cannot say that there's only one way to do anything in life, and mediation is part of that too. And I like the way you said and prepared this meeting with, as a good mediator, asking questions on the how, what, when, where, which, who, and why. So I might, as mediator, do things differently. I may go backwards. Because I'm not even sure if there's an order on this or anything, but I think I will go with the last question first. Why?
I put them alphabetically because I did not want anyone to say no.
I know,
but you're absolutely right. That's where the starting point is.
Even that you don't have that intention, there it is. There's some kind of order, even when we don't want to put any order at all. So in my mind, there was some kind of order, not logically. I mean, you have to put them somehow. So it's hard to find which should be like the first question that we need to ask, because in mediation, we try to follow some kind of flexible order in order to follow your question.
You can't go there so soon. First, we have to talk about you. And then we will only then can we go ahead, because that's the most important part. Because first I have to talk about you, the fact that in the first symposium, the mediation in our culture and traditions part of it, I really like that. So Rafael had put this out. He had made this poster for that symposium, which is, we called it the Woodstock of mediation. And of course, 97 speakers, 45 countries, 2 months. So that was wonderful. So thank you, Rafa, for doing this. It was really nice. The poster basically on the original poster of Woodstock. So that's what, Rafa. But you have to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, and all the wonderful work you're doing in Mexico needs to be out there. Please.
Well, thank you. And also thank you for being open to take some ideas from other people. I mean, I did that just as a little token to the effort and the time that you're putting here in this event. So I was surprised. That was our first contact, I believe, doing that. And ever since, I have followed your steps and all the different activities and people that you're inviting. Some people that I know. I just had a meeting with mediators that work for the World Bank. And one of them asked me about you, because she saw me and she said, I have seen this guy going all over, the world, talking about many things, and tell me a little bit more about, because she saw Ken, and Ken is a well-known referent mediator for many people, especially also in the United States. she's in the United States. So we talk a little bit about these forums, and I send her some of the links. Hope she's watching right now. And what I do, I have become a mediator for over the past, I don't know, 25 years or something. So I guess I had to start from the scratch. 25 years ago, there was nothing. There was no mediation centers, no mediators at all. And of course, there was no law. So I can tell the story from the beginning, because in a way, I was involved in some of those movements and some of those legislatively talking exercises around the country. And with my experience working with the United Nations and the World Bank, I had the opportunity to talk and share some of the experiences from other parts of the world and other mediators as yourself on what is going on and what is happening in different parts of the world. So I will have to say that I will talk only about my own experience in Mexico, maybe a little bit on what I have seen and traveling Latin America and what I have seen in other countries as well. But the most experience that I have, of course, it's been traveling for many years in all the states of the union of this country in Mexico. And yeah, that's one of the things that I do the most, more than just mediation. Maybe my main activity is to try to develop projects on mediation, on social mediation, on commercial mediation, sometimes working some legislatively exercises as the one that we're having right now. I will talk a little bit what is happening right now. Even today, in a few hours, the Senate of this country will pass for the very first time a national code on procedures on family and civil cases. Only one, because we have 32 different codes in each state. And for the first time, we will have only one for the entire country. And I refer to that because part of that code will talk about ADR in general, specifically, of course, more a little bit about mediation. In my sense, not enough. And also we are waiting. I mean, we have been waiting for this code for the past 4 years. So it's been a quite huge and long exercise around the country. And there's also a national law on ADR that we have been waiting also another 4, close to 5 years. And so today is the day for that civil procedural codes on family and civil cases. And we are not sure if it's gonna pass today or not, but we are, crossing our fingers. It's been a long, long way for that. And to see what is coming in the near future. So yeah, the first question is like, why? Why do we have, or do we need really a law on mediation? I guess there's many answers to that question. I think one of them is because we are lawyers, it's in our nature. And I think that's one of the things to blame a little bit, at least in Mexico and maybe in some other countries. In reality, we have too many lawyers on mediation, and that's becoming part of the problem. Because as you mentioned, we have different mindsets. And it takes an effort and time to understand and to change that mindset, as your last guest talks, how difficult it is to talk to not just to lawyers, but to students who are studying to become lawyers one day, and they only have maybe one class on ADR in the entire 4 or 5 years at the university. So it's still unbalanced. So yeah, lawyers think that everything needs to be regulated. That's one part. The second part is that at the beginning of the story here, there was a big project that I was involved as a consultant from the American Bar Association from the United States, sponsored by funds from the federal government of the United States, the Agency for International Development of the United States, USAID. During 5 years, we went all the country around, traveled to try to convince first the tribunals. And it was something needed at that time, but something happened on the way that we got lost. I think that they gained too much power because it's on their nature. The tribunals are institutions that brings and provide some kind of control. They want to control everything. And when these legislations in different states start to pop up and come to life, they were made by the hand of lawyers who work for the tribunals. And in a sense, they serve with the biggest spoon they can to provide them with all the control. It's like mediation cannot exist if I am not saying so. So I say, who is a mediator? Who is not? I mean, we all, from nothing to over-regulation. And all these, in some cases, crazy requirements to become a mediator. Even it's harder to become a mediator sometime in this country than to be a lawyer or a doctor or engineer or architect. As your guest was just talking, they don't ask that to become an arbitrator. And the difference on the approach and the impact that, you know, the arbitrator really makes a decision that is binding for the people, there's no regulation at all. So it's this kind of balance and nonsense. Like, I mean, I thought like 20 years ago, it was a good idea to have some regulation because, of course, building public policy always impacts and provide something closer to the people. That's the main reason why we have legislation on any matter, to accelerate, in a way, the approach, in this case of mediation. But we take decisions by fear of something that you don't understand. So we try to block and put all these locks on the way, and it looks like a obstacles career that is very disencouraged to someone who wants to start and look ahead and say, do I have to run and do all that in order to become a mediator? So that's one thing. Say that after all these years, we are not where we were supposed to be when we started this movement more than 20 years ago. And one of the reasons is we empower too much tribunals. And I think tribunals are looking to the universe of mediation on the microscope, which is a whole universe inside, but that's not the entire universe. We have forgot to look to the stars, which is a bigger and wider, space to look on the telescope. So the difference between using the microscope and the telescope, I think is a key point to have a different perspective on why and to whom and where and all those questions to put in order. Because you have to look at the numbers. This is a good size country compared to Central and some South American countries in this continent. Mexico have over 120 something million people. I live in a state in the northeast of Mexico, the state of Nuevo León, with something like closer to 6 million people live here. And from just to make the point, from those 5 or 6 million people who live here, the tribunals accept something like close to 150,000 cases a year. Wow. Nobody is going to make me believe that the other 4 and something million people live in peace and everything is perfect in their life. So that one thing that is telling you that those numbers is that the conflict exists, but it's not at the tribunals. It's out there. It's still there. Who is taking care of that? No one really on the system. And sometimes when you go into the judicial system, it's too late. I mean, you provide mediation, the last step of the process of the conflict, talking about conflict. So I guess that the approach at the beginning on their head was like, this mediation thing looks like something to save us for not to collapse for many cases. It's like saying something crazy like, let's invent something called mediation to solve our conflicts for the tribunal and not to collapse, which is not true. And it's not even happening. Why? Because they were afraid to open mediation. Again, they are institutions that they want to keep control. And the excess of control just stops things to move forward. When I was working on this project, the mid-90s, we had these study tours bringing magisters, lawyers, universities, judges from Mexico to the United States to see and study how it works, on their system. Of course, we are talking about different realities from everything. And of course, from our origins, we are not a common law country. We come more from the civil code, the Napoleon code. One question that I asked, because you see that they were having so much success on providing mediation on the numbers that they achieved. And you always come with these questions like trying to make a shortcut to your trip. Like, how is it that you're dealing with lawyers? That was one of the questions more than 20 years ago. And I had a response that it took me some time to understand the true meaning of that. He said, no, the only way that you can work through mediation with lawyers, you have to drag them to the system. And I was like, it sounds kind of violent comment, to drag them to the process, because it's in some of those cases, it's mandatory by law, or it's a prerogative by the judge to send you, to mediation. And I didn't understand that at the moment till I got back and started to work here. And still, the numbers are very poor. Over 20 years after these laws have passed, that they say that, you can go if you want or not. So the numbers are like 4% of all the cases that are in the tribunals right now. After all these years, they only go to mediation because in the law says that when you go to a tribunal, the judge had to ask when they notify you that you've been sued or something, that if you want, there's this thing called ADR, which is also kind of long name. As you mentioned, it doesn't connect. What the word that connects is mediation. And even that is kind of complex to understand. So imagine if you don't even call it mediation, you call it alternative mechanism for conflict resolution. That's such a long, because that's what we do, lawyers. We convert something that is simple and we make it complex. That's part of our job. I don't know why, but it's in some kind of our nature as lawyers. We make everything so complex in order to justify our existence, I think. So anyway, we are starting to talk about what would it happen if we move from no one is going to mediation because it's not mandatory to a mandatory system. And there are many examples of that, not only in the United States. You can take, for example, of what happened in Italy in the past 10 years and the numbers that they have now, but the process that they've been through is very similar to the experience that we had in Mexico. So in a way, we are looking, some of us, or studying very close, the Italian model that, as you know, is being used as an example as well for the European Union, some kind of success example that Turkey and other countries are taking in consideration when they try to build their mediation system in courts. I have to put some accent when I talk about the system on the courts, because as we say in the numbers, it's just very few percentage, especially in countries like Mexico, where justice is not for everyone. Not everyone have, only 19% of the population of this country have access to the judicial system.
Yeah, that's
because it's so expensive.
Yeah.
So, and many other reasons, of course. I mean, like we are a republic. We are divided in 3 powers. But when they divide the money, who you think take the tiny slice of the cake? The judicial system. They only gave them like 1.5% of the entire budget of the state. So you become to understand where is also the problem. It's a budgetary conflict of interest on the fight between politicians on how they split the money. And the money is with the state governor or the president of the republic, and then the federal and the state congresses, and at the end, so they don't have the capacity and the budget to run a national system on anything, not even in their core business, which is provide service of justice. They have failed on that too. So I guess that we put a bet on a dead horse. It's not going to make it. So it's not, one of the key things that I learned is, of course, we have to work with them. It's an important system that we cannot ignore, even that the numbers that they have are so poor. But we as a society need to inspire that we need to have a good judicial system. And of course, being a lawyer myself as well, the 5 cents that still live in me as a lawyer tell me how important it is to have a good judicial system providing those justice services to the public. But as we mentioned, conflicts don't live there. They are out there. Where are the conflicts if they don't go to tribunals? They are at home. They are at the school, and they are at the neighborhood. Those are the places where the mediation haven't been able to access. And I think the second wave or second movement of mediation in this country is not to keep working as we have been working with lawyers and judicial systems, which we had to. I think it was good, not good enough. And in a way, they're already providing some kind of services with a very low impact, but it's there. And I don't think it's going to grow more until they decide to change that system. If that happens or not, I am not sure when or how, but we need to go a step backwards and to have another view on the telescope of mediation, what is the majority of the conflicts, and also to go on time, because sometimes it's too late when they come to the judicial system, and only very few of them will have the opportunity, which is in a way some kind of injustice itself to do that. So the judicialization of mediation, it's done in a way. There's some changes that need to be made there, but I guess that the second wave or the second movement of this mediation movement in this country will have to look to the telescope, not the microscope, and to do what I call a social mediation on the families, on the schools, on the neighbors. So we're talking something deeper and wider than just talking about mediation. We're talking about peace, peace building, peacemaking. We live in this violent society where numbers are always increasing in so much violence everywhere, to sit and do nothing. So I guess not only mediation, but some other approaches to build a culture of peace is going to take us some time, but we need to go there, not just to have a law, open a mediation center and sit and wait for people to come. We need to stand up, start to walk, and go and face and look to that people where the conflict lives. So that I think is not on the mindset yet of the country and the legislators and lawyers as well. We are in a more reactive mood, waiting for the conflict to come. And when it comes, on their mindset is, I need a lawyer, I need to go to a trial with a judge. We are not still there on their mindset, like, mediation is one of the opportunities that I have. So I don't know you, but every day that passes, I am not getting any younger. And I am not willing to wait another 25 years to see when it's going to happen. So what can be a factor, at least in this micro system, on the judicial system, on the courts, to make it mandatory? What is the pros and the cons on that? Those are some of the questions as well that we need to ask. I guess the only thing that will accelerate that is to have a mandatory mediation before starting a trial. And I have a good example of that, not in other part of the world, here in this country, because we are on the implementation of one of the most important reforms on labor law. We reformed our constitution a few years ago, and what the constitution said that on labor issues, they will get specialized tribunals on labor matters, and conciliation, not mediation, because conciliation comes from the Spanish, from conciliación, from many years ago, hundreds of years ago, and mediation, it comes more from the common law countries or English-speaking countries, as a translation to mediación from English mediation. What the Constitution says now, that before starting to a trial, you have to start a conciliation process, which means that there is no judge that it will take a labor case in this country anymore if you don't show that at least you have shown up or you try, or the other party didn't show to the conciliation process. So this has been running for the past 2 or 2.5 years, and the numbers change. Because as I mentioned, on the system that we have today, only 4% of the cases go to mediation. But with mandatory conciliation on labor cases, in only 2 years, the national average, it's 75% of all labor cases have been solved on conciliation, which means that if you're a judge, these are good and happy news, because before you have to eat 100% of the cake, and now you will have only 25%. And even in that process, there are some stages of conciliation in the judicial system. So let's say that it will take or tackle down some other percentage of that. So the systems have been designed and built now around the world not to go all the way to the end in the court system and to have a sentence, but to step down at some point or some moment, and the sooner the better for everyone. And also, we are saving millions and millions of dollars on our money, on our taxes, for the system, and also for the parties as well, of course, because they don't have to spend as much money as they need to in a judicial system to pay lawyers, to pay the expenses of the everything costs here. There's there's no free ride on this tribunal systems anywhere in the world.
Rafa,
So I guess that
only free thing is the mediators. They are coming for free. Everything else is.
Well, it depends. I don't believe that. I mean, of course, there are free mediators that they don't charge you because they work for the judicial system. So they are getting paid. They have a salary from our taxes again. So, I mean, it's a service that you already pay in advance when you pay your taxes.
No, I tell you, the Georgia law, we were just discussing with Sophie, Georgia law itself puts in there that the mediator, and they will they will decide how many matters the mediator will do for free. They put it in the law itself. So, and no one is going to pay that mediator. It's just going to be for
But
free.
I think that's an American system that they do on pro bono basis. It doesn't say that you have to make 100% and live from air. It means that if you want to, let's say, be a lawyer in the United States, you can charge whatever your, regular basis to cover your, your fees. But you need to do two things: regular training and continuing education. So you have to collect some kind of amount of hours on that, and pro bono services, mandatory both. If you want to be, a lawyer in the United States, you need to. It doesn't mean that everything needs to be pro bono. And there's some, since we are so close to the U.S., even though we come from different systems, there's always an influence from one country to the other. Historically, in Mexico.
Yeah, but Sophie's point was that one is, of course, the free part of it, which is available. Pro bono, we have to discuss pro bono and free by itself also. Pro bono, for me, is something that you provide to someone who can't afford it. Here, it's been provided to everyone, so it's free. Although they try to put it around pro bono. But the other thing is the
there should be some criteria, of course.
And what she's saying is the amount. Otherwise, of course, they'll do that for free. The other part, what they get is so demeaning. She calls that amount demeaning. That the amount they get. So and of course, like we discussed, that for anyone else, there is no such requirement. It seems only for the mediator who has to rise above it all.
I don't see that it's a bad idea to provide pro bono service. I mean, I have done that even before we had a law, but that's because of, that's me. I mean, I grew up in a family where we have been raised, all my 6 brothers, and my mother and my father, always being on service of people. I mean, I was a Boy Scout for 22 years of my life. My father is 91, and he is still a Boy Scout. I think he's the oldest active Boy Scout in the country right now.
Wow.
Alive and kicking. and service has been part of our history and life in my family. So I never need any law or requirement to ask me to do something for someone. So I try to balance that. Now that I have to, every 3 years, in order to recertify as a mediator here in this state, I have to get some kind of pro bono hours, and of course some kind of training during every 3 years that I have to collect 30 hours and another 30 hours of pro bono. And I do a lot of activities and projects that sometimes I just don't charge, or trainings and services. And as you mentioned, for those who really need them, you know.
Yeah, for those.
And you know, I have learned life and God always provides you. You know, life is a boomerang, and for the more that you want to give, is more that you're going to take back. So some of the biggest projects that I have taken and charged well, they became sometimes from some of those contacts, you know, just for doing it for in a pro bono basis. And there's no way I can predict that to happen, but I can tell in my own story that it happened. So I always encourage people to be a little more generous and you know, to give a little extra because it's needed, just because of that.
Rafa, I'm sure you can't question my generosity. I've given my for so many years
I know.
to do this.
I know, and I think that's one of the things that connect us, you know, not just you and me. There's always good people out there that are doing many things for people, just for love, you know. And I guess that's one of the characteristics of mediators. We are, some of us, we are dreamers. You know, we dream on to have a better world, to live it better than the one that we took, and that will be our legacy maybe in the future. Yeah, you know, we pass and walk around this globe and live it a little better than how we found it.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think, why do we need a legislation on mediation? I guess yes, but the shorter the better. And that's also a cultural issue here, not only in Mexico, but in some Latin American countries. As you can see, I talk and talk and talk and talk. And that's what Latin Americans do. We make something this big, longer, and we do that too when we do legislation. We want to put everything there. Different as you can see the Mediation Act in the US. Just a few pages. You know, like you mentioned on the invitation to this symposium, what are these efforts on the UNCITRAL model law, which is that, only a model. So also I think we have some wrong idea on, and it's a technique on legislation. Not all the lawyers know how to make a legislation. That's a specific specialty on law. And we want to put everything there. One of the mistakes that we make here is that we put all the system in one law. Like what happens at the tribunal, we put in this general law, which should be just that, general. No, there are half of the law are the faculties, the requirements, the, their obligations as a tribunal. Technically, legislatively talking, that's a mistake. That should be in another law that already exists, which is the organic law, the judicial system. Why to put, which all the functions from that should be on that specific law that already exists. So half of that of our general law is more like a law made by them for them. Again, we are watching mediation through the microscope. And we forget the rest, the majority, as we mentioned, what I call the social mediation, families, schools, those community where the conflict live every day and violent numbers just increase. You just need to look at the papers on the news to see how bad we are doing, and how wrong and how worse everything is getting here. So, who is a good question? Who should be doing this? And that's another game. We are in this country the masters of making this. We call everyone to these exercises called by the state or federal Congress to listen to everyone in some kind of theater play. And at the end, of course, they always do whatever they want as good politicians. I do as I hear you, but I always do my will. So people, they just don't show to this kind of exercises because they know at the end, they already have underneath the table already set the project of the law, and they act as if they are listening to you, but at the end they are not. You know what I'm saying? And again, who? I said early, there's always lawyers. And not just lawyers, lawyers who work for the state, which is another mindset of lawyer. It's a lawyer that have their eyes look inside, not outside. So if you're talking to build a public policy, you need to think in the public. It looks like they are not thinking or looking at the public. They're looking on their own problems. Government as an institution, and how these laws are going to solve my problem as an organization, which is okay. I mean, I'm not against to have a good government who works well, but a general law, which is public and for the public, where are the results on touching people's lives? How this public policy is going to impact in my life, and not just in one system of the government. So who, I think we forgot to make a very open, clean, and democratic exercise on that. It's like something that is already done, and they invite you. I mean, I sometimes don't want to go because it's like a waste of time, or you feel like they're laughing at your head and your face on something that you already solved. And again, who are the experts? So sometimes I feel like everybody's talking about mediation, but they are not mediators. And everyone have an opinion on mediation, and they haven't been in a mediation in their lives. They haven't taken any training at all. They haven't even read any single book, but they have an opinion, and that opinion becomes a law. That's tough to swallow. So every time that I see a new law coming on ADR in this country, I have this mixed double emotions. The first one, like, yay, we have advanced, we are growing, of course. And then when you start to read the body of the law, you start to shake your head like, no, they didn't understand what they're talking about. Who was there? Who had this opinion? And again, you see that they are driven by fear, the fear of being ignorant of what is mediation about. And when you make decisions in your life driven by fear, those are not the best decisions in your life, right? And it's okay if that's the way you live your life, but you cannot make a public policy driven by fear, just going nowhere. And that's part of some of our lessons learned, I think, in these past years. So it's very important to ask that question: who should be on the table?
And also, Rafa, you have to also ask who should not be there, because
well, I sometimes complain too much about lawyers and tribunals, but I have to understand they are part of the system. They have an important seat, but just one space, not the entire table.
And then there's vested interests also who have been part of legislation making in relation to mediation, which I feel is a bit of an issue which needs to be, we have to be very careful with that, because what is that vested interest, what is that self-interest, I think should be, of course, I think questioned. It should not be taken as, okay, let's get these people in, let's find out how they would get affected by law. I was just thinking, I mean, I don't know, even let's just say the Italian model, my thought came that I was told, that session there was someone from Italy, that Rafaela was there. And the fact that if things have to go to a mediation center under their scheme of things. And I was just thinking, Leonardo D'Orso, whom you know definitely, actually runs an institution. He runs an institute. I found that a conflict of interest. That if you are talking about creating this kind of a structure and you are actually running an institution, where these matters are going to go, I have to look at it more carefully. But after what she said, I found that becomes a bit of an issue, because I see here also there was a law, the bill drafted here, and you had these training institutions who were part of it. And if in that bill you say that training is required, I think there's a conflict of interest there. We have to be very careful there.
There are different models, even in Mexico, for certifying, or a process for certification of many things, not just to become a mediator. So one is this world created by the tribunals, where they say that they invented mediation. And there are some regulations with international standards from the Minister of Education, which does the core business is education. The tribunals are not the best example on that, because it's not the core system education, but they're in that business that they don't know. That's where they're building many things that they don't know, and providing all these requirements in order to control. And of course, at the same time, you are creating these providers that have some kind of monopoly of the service. Because in the actual system that we have right now, they say you need to take this many hours, and you can only take the training with the people that I said it's a trainer or the institutions who provide, which it's, I'm not against to have some kind of standards to provide some or assure some quality, because as anywhere there are many people who say that they know mediation, that they teach mediation. They're not. But I guess that's also on the market. There's it's not like you can control everything. The other model is the one that the Minister of Education have in anything. Like, let's take for example that you want to take the TOEFL exam to see how good is your English. That's an international standard in order to know the level of how good you are not in this specific language. And then if you want to become a center who certify on the TOEFL exam for English language, you have to pass some different requirements that they ask you, but they only apply the exam. They don't teach you the language. You say that you speak English, come any day, do your exams, and if you pass, you're certified. And if you're not, go back and take classes with whoever you want. Because at the end, the institution who certify, they don't care how many hours or with who you were taking classes. If you pass, you pass, and I certify you. That's as simple as that.
And I'm saying, Rafa, the only people who certify are the people in the dispute with whom you work. That's your certifying body. They say, yes, this person passed the test, you've passed the test. So it's a user-related, whole activity is a user-related activity, because that's where everything is going to happen. They are going to decide whom they want to choose as a mediator.
Right.
They will say who actually has been able to work with them as a mediator whom they benefited from.
That's one of the battles that we're having right now here, because I am in the second group. I want to take down a little bit this increasing power on making decision on the tribunal of who is and who is not, and by who a mediator. And they have done some crazy, terrible things there, and some requirement nonsense to become a mediator. And on the other hand, I am trying with another group of people, trying to convince the Senate that it is not the core system, the core business of the judicial system, education at all. So, but again, it's about power and control. And of course, I have to say that in some cases, some of them have some business out there with some of these institutions or mediators. And what we're saying, no. We already have the Minister of Education, and that's their main and core business. And they have these international standards in order to build a certification. And they already have many providers who certify with a professional methodology. Not just that, hundreds of other standards. And but at least we're talking about that. Before there was nothing, just the tribunals, and they had the last word. They don't want to leave that to someone else. So we are in this battle right now between private and independent mediators and the tribunal, who still wants to rule and say who is and who is not, and with who and how and all that. Well, I don't know if we're going to make it, but it's a battle that we're having right now.
No, we'll have to. I'll tell you what the thought process. My thought process has been, and it's always, I think it's going to be that everything can't be certified. There are certain people-to-people connections, human connections, which are more. Of course, mind is one part of it. The heart, soul, spirituality you keep hearing about. Those are connections on a different level, and that is where this comes in. When someone comes in, people trust the person, they bring that person, that connection is much deeper. So everything can't be certified, and I'm saying the next step is going to be that you're going to certify mothers. You cannot be a mother up till we will train you. We will
that's why. But you know why we're talking about this? Because we're still talking about looking into the microscope, and they only think about judicial system. And if you make a mediation, it will be like a sentence provided by a judge, but it's not a judge. It's a mediator. So they start to wonder, how is that possible? And the impact on the, and I understand that, but again, that's a minority of the population. So if you really want to impact on any legislation on a general basis with a social view, you need to divide, say, okay, there's this part of the universe that is the core system. And it's important, of course. And we need to talk and regulate that. But we have this big shock out there that no one is taking care.
And the numbers.
And there, you don't need to be certified for anything, because we're talking about, so that's what I put in this word, social mediation, family, schools, community. You want to become part of this microscope view of this microsystem? Fine, these are the requirements. Because of course, it will be a legal impact on what you are doing. The obligations and the things that come out from a mediation agreement made by the parties with the assistance of a facilitator or mediator. And in some of these states in this country, if you go with a certified public or private mediator, the mediation agreement turns the same as a sentence by a judge. So the impact, legally talking, it's important. I mean, you need to know as a mediator the legal impact on what you're doing. And that requires to have some specification or certification if you want. If not, you can go out there and be just a mediator on other cases, not in the judicial system. So that's why I said, and at least in this new law that we are waiting for, they have a new chapter on social mediation. Not enough, but at least it's on the map, and it will have to grow. That's what I think that is coming in the next years and in legislation, because it's on our constitution. It's mandatory that the Congress of this country have to provide us with a general law on ADR. It's mandatory. It's not if they want to provide. No, they have to. And we have been waiting more than 4 years for that law to pass. And they have 5 different initiatives on the same law, fighting parties, politicians, tribunals, lawyers. It's like the metaverse of it's like the metaverse of mediation.
Everyone wants a slice of the pie. That's the universe. Yeah. Everyone wants a slice. But I'll tell you one thing. Of course, I will ask you that question later. First thing is that in terms of the conciliation and the labor issues, labor disputes, I think needs to be looked at a little carefully, because I think Turkey is also an example where a lot of work has happened there, and they say a lot of success. I think we have to look a little closer there, because Ashian was there. We only had a short session, so she's doing another session on Saturday. But her thing was that these settlements happen because those people really don't have a choice, and there are power imbalances in those mediations, because they're showing very good success in labor-related disputes. But inside the story might be power imbalances and no other alternative to these people. Those people who, the labor. So that's why they're settling. So that's why they're settling. And that might not be the best thing in relation to mediation also, because they'll go back saying that we just had to do it because there was no option. And that part of it is not good for mediation, because you don't go back happy saying that I was happy with the settlement.
I am not totally agree. I think that at least what I have seen here, first, it's better than the system that they had. When they had conciliation always, and they most of the time also conciliate. But at that moment, conciliators were not professionals. We're just someone who passed by, who works there, and prepare. With the new law, in order to become a labor conciliator, it's by an open invitation and through different examinations, and they have to choose whoever passed with the best qualification. So it's starting to professionalize conciliation and labor issues for the very first time. Those are good news.
Because in our case, in our country, we had conciliation as part of our Industrial Disputes Act 1947. Okay, it's been there. It did not work out for whatever reason. I mean, I'm not getting into why it did not work out, but the concept has been, it's an old concept, because I think it was understood that labor disputes should be looked at from that perspective, and the social aspect of it and all that, definitely. But we have to look at the structure, what really went wrong, so that's not the same thing being repeated again, because it's been 80 years, almost 80 years, and you're still not being able to get it working. So I think we need to definitely look at that.
At the end, there's no there's no such a thing as a perfect legislation. It just doesn't exist. In this case, I guess, in my personal opinion, what they have left out on conciliation, it's private conciliation for labor cases. It just doesn't exist because, again, who is sitting on that table making that law? Lawyers who work for the system, and they want to keep control. So they only, no, it's going to be mandatory, not because they really believe in the benefits of mediation or conciliation, to keep control. This part of the government, not the other branch, which is the judicial system. So I can keep control here and still do my things as I used to do in the past 200 years, where the government, as politicians, control. And that also provides a big slice on corruption. Yeah. I have to say it. Yeah. And the thing is that this system that is working well now is going to collapse very soon. Yep. Because the amount of cases that they have, they only thought we will have mandatory conciliation, but not because they believe in that, because they want to keep control. And as you say, we will solve it here. So it's not the best on the best interest of the parties. They have some perversion thinking on how to keep control, and there's a lot of money there too. People making businesses out of that.
Huge.
So what is going to happen is that the law says that they have 45 days for the entire process to begin and to finish. Only 45 days. It looks like a lot of days. Depends on again, the budget. How much money you have, the spaces, the number of people, and what is going to happen is that they will tell you, well, your conciliation audience will take place in 1 week, 3 weeks, and then they will have to take over more than 45 days, which will be against the law. And what do you think is going to happen on day 45? You will have the lawyer knocking at your door, hey, give me my paper where it says that I have been here since day 1. This is day 45. Give me the paper to go with the judge. So again, the system is going to crack down.
Which is
because
no, even that
it's going to, and then they will start to look what they're doing at the tribunals. They have private mediators there, and they take some percentage of the cases, not on the expenses of the budget. So I think that's one thing they left out of this reform on labor issues. They didn't consider private conciliators at all. I think it's a big mistake that they haven't seen yet, but they're going to see it, because when they start to get in closer to day 45, their numbers are going to start to go down, down, and down. And the number of cases at tribunals are going to increase. And you remember that at the tribunals, they only have 1 or 2% of the entire budget. So you're going to take all the cases who is the poorest in the system. It's just not going to work. So again, um, there's no perfect legislation. There are many things to consider on that, to measure power between different parties of the system on the government branch. And the thing is that they always have this like for tomorrow, like you're asking for too much. It's like if we don't deserve better. And I don't know if we're going to achieve the goal, but I am going to die on the fight because, as I mentioned, I am not getting younger every day, and I want to see things to happen in my time life.
Yeah, we are not going to fight these people. What we are going to do is we are going to work at the grassroots level, which is, I don't know whether you read about the World Mediation Circle that I put out, but what I'm saying is that we are making mediation circles in communities, schools, colleges, organizations. Let's get those people together there. And from there, you will find those people with the mediator mindset, the peacemaker mindset. We'll find those people there only. So it's not that we are
Oh, of
bringing,
course.
we're not going to bring anyone, we're not teaching anything, we are just identifying those people, creating that atmosphere there. And all I want is legislation, please stay away from this. That's all I want. And if you have to keep, whatever I need is a simple legislation which I can show that, look, the basics are protected, but
Right,
beyond that,
right.
there is no interference of the judiciary or the government in your process. That's all I need.
But but you need some kind of public policy to impose and to accelerate that, because otherwise we will need like an army of Vikrams around the world doing what you're doing, and it's just not going to be enough. And the world cannot wait. I mean, we cannot wait many more years.
Rafa, look at how it works, and which I've not been saying for more than 2 years now. All I want is 1,000 people reach 1,000 people. You've reached 1,000,000 people, and just 1,000 people identify 1,000 people with the mediator mindset. You have 1,000,000 mediators out there, and then from there the progression will be so much faster. So it's going to be that way. It's going to be, Rafa, one day I will get him and get him to maybe understand the project, and then on the ground it'll be
But
easy
it's
for you.
it's like saying, I mean, I won't put a bet on lawyers. Like,
No, not
we're
even
going to
touching them.
change lawyers.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to work with them. We have to teach them. We have to change their mind setting to accept a little. I mean, of course, we need to keep doing that. And as you mentioned, to have all these thousands that get other thousands. I'm not saying it's one or the other. What I'm saying that one of the factors that accelerate processes to get access to anything in the world is public policy. And public policy is talking about legislation. So if we're talking about legislation, which kind of legislation? And I think that we agree. The shorter, the better. Just something general to provide a platform to grow.
Which is what I put out there. I
Um,
put out the UNCITRAL model law. I put out the Indian legislation taken from the 1980 conciliation rules of UNCITRAL. We have the
right.
basic legislation there, which provides what? Basically, confidentiality protected, if the process being without prejudice, the mediator not being called as a witness, and the enforceability, it's the settlement agreement is as good as a court decree. That's all you need.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is, I mean, it's all so simple beyond that. So those are the as basic as it should be. But the only problem there is that, like you said, some people don't want to lose control. And one is the judiciary, definitely. Even the politicians, they have never, this is a colonizer's mindset that you have to keep the divide. You do not want
Yes.
people to sit down and resolve things because we can't even understand the scale. I don't know about Mexico. In India, there was some report. Now that report had, of course, statistics were, they also did not, they gave a very broad range, but at the highest level, they were saying almost 30 times the amount of matters that go into courts actually exist outside. 30 times to that level.
Right.
So can you
Right.
imagine what the scale is going to be, and how are you ever going to say that we will put out these trained, certified concept out there? We'll have to get them out from there. They have to be people
Right.
who we have to identify from there, because the scale is huge. It's huge. I mean, numbers, you can't even imagine those numbers. So I think that's somewhere we have to
And
go.
going back to the labor cases in Mexico, um, it's not perfect, but it's better than how it was, because talking about how you make that decision to do a conciliation and to agree, in the past they had this conciliation and arbitration um, outside of the court system. So in a way, they were providing justice outside the justice system, which is even against our constitution. So it was something wrong for over 100 years. And then the same person who was your conciliator could turn into your arbitrator. So again, a lot of people say, no, I better choose to solve in conciliation, because the same guy is going to be at the end of the road waiting for me with a bat. And it's not, again, the best. Now they separate that. Now we have a judge specialized on labor cases on the judicial system, and you have to apply to an independent institution outside the judicial system for conciliation. What it means that you took the power that this same person had, and now you have a different independent person and system. I am not saying that it's perfect, but it's better than what we had in the past. And what I think it's left out is the opportunity to people to choose if they want a private service or not. And for those who cannot afford, that's why the state should provide public and free services. The thing is that there are so many people requiring that, and there are no other options, they're going to collapse. That's what is going to happen.
But Rafa, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take you on the telescope. Now let's look at it from a global level, because
Yes.
legislation, sometimes we do get into this whole local thing, but mediation for me has nothing to do with any local thing. I or people sitting in India can trust Rafa sitting in Mexico to be their mediator. There should be no reason to stop that. The dispute could be only in India. It doesn't have to be an international dispute. There could be Mexicans living in India, and there might be a dispute in India, but they trust Rafa. Why should who is anyone to stop them from sitting with Rafa? First of all, I want legislation to
Yes.
be that you can get whoever you want, because otherwise
Right.
the whole process, I think, then you are not understanding the process. If you, it has to happen with someone you trust. So that aspect of it has to be looked at globally. Beyond that, the enforceability of an agreement, we could be sitting anywhere in the world. The enforceability in the place where you want the enforceability should be available. I'm saying that, okay, we talk about the Singapore Convention for international disputes, but that's for international disputes. That's my very, very small number of disputes. What about
It is.
disputes which happen in local disputes, but we are not sitting in India. We might be sitting anywhere else, but we just resolve it. That agreement should be enforceable as a court decree in the country where that dispute is. Why should we put layers in between and trying to create some kind of a local legislation to that extent to actually stop people from actually benefiting from a process which is their process? I've been trying to put that out. This
Right.
is their process. Don't come in the way. And that's why, for me, legislation has to look at it from a much larger picture, that this is a dispute resolved by them on their own. And is enforceability, first of all, nothing should come in the way. And in the process, you should not create any hurdles at all. Choose whom they want to, do the process they want the way they want to, protect the aspect, like I said, confidentiality without prejudice, evidence, witness concept, do all that. That's it. That's the way I'm looking at it, because we have to create it as a global thing, because that's what I like about the Singapore Convention. The aspect that even if you've entered into that agreement anywhere in the world, it doesn't have to be, don't have to be in even a signatory country, might not be in even a signatory country, but that settlement agreement is enforceable in a country which has ratified it. That's the kind of domestic structure also that needs to be created. That's when I think that people have understood what this whole process is about. So
Right. And as you mentioned, the Singapore Convention, it's a game changer for and a good example for many countries who are in the middle of these crazy debates about what is mediation about and how to make a legislation, because it's going to also make some impact locally when the country become part of this convention, and you have a local law that doesn't recognize that, or is going to I mean, you are asking all these requirements here, and there's Joe Smith coming from I don't know where, and their mediations are mandatory. And who is this guy? You're going to recognize, and that also has to do with who is in charge of the moment. Like at this moment in this country, for the very first time in our history, we have a left party on power with a more socialist ideas, which send us back to Mexico 1970, when we didn't want to look at the world. We are good enough. Nobody from outside is going to tell us this and that. So guess what? Mexico is not part of this convention yet. It will be, of course, but it's going to take time, because some ideologies and parties and politicians that change from one moment to another, that are more open or close to the world. Right now, here in this country, our international affairs are not living their best moment. And but it's going to happen, as it happens with the New York Convention on arbitration. But it took, even there, it took us over 20 something years to become part of the New York Convention. So I think it's going to happen. It's just going to take us some time. And when we are there, things are going to start to change, because it just no sense to have to be measured with two different rules, you know. But we are in that debate, bringing these examples to have this. It's not that we know the future or what is going to happen, but we have some ideas or some clues that what is happening in the world, trying to provide and to share this vision of the world of mediation, that I'm sure it's just a matter of time. I mean, it's going to happen. It's just that we don't know for sure how or when. I guess that I'm an impatient person who wants things to happen and get a little upset sometimes, and sometimes I just get tired. But you know, there's always another day where you recharge batteries and get ready for the next you know, challenge to face, and to try to increase and to get more people access to this wonderful world and service of mediation. Because there's, as you said, many, I have met many good mediators who are not certified. They have been there always. And as they mentioned in Georgia, and it's on our roots, it's on our history, it's part of our legacy. Every country and every history on our people, we have that. We have the Aztecs, we have the Mayas, we have still today. Those communities provide these services from hundreds and hundreds of years. They're even recognized in our constitution. Those original people who are still here living in this country, they do still solve conflicts as in the very beginning and the old days. And they are recognized by our constitution that they can be ruled and solve their conflicts in their own traditions.
And that's why the symposium #1 was mediation in our culture and traditions. And of course, after that, I had one on indigenous peoples and mediation. Of course, you were too busy to be participating in that. But I think, Rafa, what we need to also, I think interesting thing that's coming out here is, which came from Sophie's discussion and this also, let us look at every country in relation to arbitration. What is it that is actually regulated? In the sense, can I appoint anyone as an arbitrator? Then can the arbitrator pass a consent award? So what we are telling people is that actually go in for arbitration, settle the matter in that
Right.
arbitration, whatever way you do, just go to the arbitrator, let the arbitrator pass a consent award, and that's good as good as a court decree. That and here
Right.
you want to regulate the entire mediator and the mediation process. That's an interesting thing. I think we should look at it from that perspective as to the absurdity of it, the absurdity of the entire thing.
It's been part of our arguments in past years. Sometimes it's like when you talk to politicians, it's like talking to the wall, you know.
And what you tell
But
them,
but what but
you
but
should tell
we
them.
we have to keep knocking and kicking and sometimes taking down the wall. It's just a matter of time and effort and constance
But I
and
think,
being there.
Rafa, are we not going to ask them, are you required to have a qualification? Are you required to be certified? And here you're taking decisions for the country. Where is your
Right.
qualification and certification and accreditations? Who's going to train you? And you want to go out.
Who may who, right? That's the question. It's like, who is first, the chicken or the egg, right?
The legislator is not required to be certified, but the legislator will put out a legislation
Of
to
of course.
certify people.
That's what I tell the tribunal. And who made you someone to certify? In which basis, arguments, experience, or standards you use? They improvise. They're the magicians of improvisation. They came out with some ideas based on just that air. And sometimes like, in order to be a mediator, you need to be lawyer. You need to take this training. You need to even psychological test in some states to see if you're not crazy, or I don't know. Like, they I think they mix up on, again, thinking like they're going to hire me. I'm not looking for a job. I'm not planning to work for them.
And
So
the
sometimes they are confused between human resources policies for a public institution in order to hire someone, which is okay. You can have your own rules to hire someone. It's like you have maybe rules in order to someone to come into your house, but you cannot put that on a law that is general for everyone, because you are not giving me a job. I
yeah,
am not asking for a job either.
yeah. And these are
And that's
people
another
trusting someone.
mistake.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And they don't understand that someone, people have to trust people on various bases. You can't even put a criteria to why someone trusts Rafa. How about what is the criteria? I mean, okay, they trust him for whatever reason. We don't know what they gauge from it. It's their trust. So to come in between that and say, no, we will tell you, that's you'll hear me say this a lot in the symposium, and I've said it in the decolonization symposium also. This is the colonization of mediation, that we will
Right.
tell you whom you should sit with. It's again that whole class distinction and everything. My mediator is the mediator, your mediator is the savage. So that kind of a thing, which
I
is
think we need to tackle down a little bit the excess of judicialization of mediation.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, at the beginning, it was something that needed to be done to have mediation at the tribunals, that they accept and embrace mediation, but it turned into something else, into some kind of control or power that they just exceeded, and they are, trying to control and ask for many, many things that they just don't. They are, I think, far away from what we thought 20 or 25 years ago, where we should be today, and we are not. And in a way, because they start to build these obstacles and these locks on mediation, and that's why mediation is not growing, and that's why nobody still know that mediation even exists.
What,
It's not an
okay.
option, because it's not an option because you cannot make something an option that they don't even know that exists.
They know what it exists. We have to connect them to the right word. Like I said, they have to connect them to the right thing, which is obviously part of their culture. But we're not connecting that. We're saying that this is rocket science we've developed, and we're bringing this to you with my rocket scientist, not
Right.
knowing that it all exists there. But Adriana is saying, well, let me say this in Spanish. Como siempre, un gusto escucharte, Rafa. That's that's Adriana.
El gusto es mío. My pleasure.
Okay, that's Adriana de
It's
Leon
always good.
Carmona.
Yes.
Mhm,
And I think she's from Yucatan.
mhm. Okay.
Yeah, she was a few years ago a student of mine in the city of Merida, in Yucatan, at the very south of Mexico, close to the border with Guatemala.
So I'm
Yes,
sure you have a big fan following. Rafa has done a lot of good work in Mexico. But Rafa,
thank
the thing
you.
is, on the 19th, that workshop also, please try and be part of that for whatever time you can come in. The idea is to discuss this in relation to, I am saying, model legislation, because definitely I feel that this is some one of those things which you can create a model global kind of a legislation where the people who benefit from it as a process, their process, that way. So
Right.
be part of that. I think you should be part of that. But you'll have to you have to give your closing remarks, concluding remarks, whatever it is. How would you do it?
I don't know. It's just been a pleasant chat with you and your audience, and to again congratulations for this big effort that you make to keep the light of mediation on, and to build this space, for us to connect, to share, uh, to dream, to charge batteries again. And it's good to have this kind of tennis match, because uh, I have changed my mind so many times in these years through these kind of exercises, and try to keep open and keep learning. Um, and I'm excited about the things that are to come. I mean, there's so much. Sometimes my students tell me at the university, like, if I become a mediator, can I make a living out of that? And I say, well, it's possible. I'm not saying that it's easy, but the only thing that I can assure you is that you never get bored, because there are so many things to be done that you will find something to entertain in the world of mediation. And you have a place here if you want, and you can, you can make your mark. And there's so much things to do. So I always welcome people to become mediators, and to put wherever they. I mean, there's so many activities, so many tasks waiting for you to come to this wonderful world of mediation. That there's some things that I will never do because they're not on my nature or your nature. But there's some people coming that they will add, and they will, uh, you know, um, increase the possibilities. And I start to teach back at the university after 21 years. I haven't been teaching at the university, learning many things from them. I become their student now, back to school. But it's 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 a hope that I have on these new generations, that they will turn and take the torch of mediation and take it faster, longer, bring it to more people. And I think that's a dream that we all share here. That's what we are here talking today. And I'm pleased. I feel that I have been blessed as a person, because I do what I love, and so I'm just, I guess, a lucky guy in those terms. So thank you for the space and the opportunity. I hope to see you again. Let's not wait so
Soon,
long.
Rafa. Yes. No, I'm telling you very clear. There are two things which I'm doing, which you have to be part of. This World Mediation Circle, we have to create mediation circles in Mexico. I know you'll be busy. I'll do most of the work, but I'll get you in whenever you have to. But we'll discuss that together. The other thing is that
Yes.
this whole skill development program kind of thing, I'm creating one. so that we can give access to people to skill development, whatever, let's call it, sessions, where they can get from the best in the world, because we don't know really what happens in those rooms where you have certifications, all that happening, but who's
Right.
really telling them what. So I'm trying to create that with the best in the world. I did start this series, lectures about mediation series, but this
Hmm.
we go do it in a structured manner. So I'll get you involved in that also. How we have to do it, because I am still thinking that let's not do it for free kind of thing. So I'm trying to work it out,
Yes.
which I'll discuss with you when you have time. We'll
Yes.
discuss this aspect. So both
Sure.
those things
My
you have to be
pleasure.
part of. You have to be part of both of them. So Rafa, always a pleasure speaking to you. And let me tell people that there is an episode of In Conversation with a Beautiful Mind with Rafa, which you can actually see on my YouTube channel. You can search his name and my name together, Mediator Vikram, Rafael Lobo. You can do that. But on my website, which of course people should go to find information, there's actually a section on the YouTube channel where you can actually get all the episodes of that series there. So you can click this and his name will be there down there on that series. So please watch that. That was an interesting conversation also, another one. So thank you, Rafa, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon, my friend. Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Bye.